I'm Jessica, 28, an elementary school teacher in Short Pump, Virginia, still living with my dad and my older brother, and that Friday night, I collapsed into bed after grading a mountain of third-grade spelling tests, barely noticing how exhausted I felt, except for the small, careful moment when Dad proudly handed me the keys to his brand-new silver SUV, bought only 3 weeks earlier, and still treated like a trophy because my own sedan was stuck at the shop, and he trusted me to use his precious ride and park it safely in the driveway, reminding me more than once to pull it closer to the garage in the morning so he could wash it later, and I placed the keys on my dresser beside my phone and wallet, exactly where they always go. At exactly 8 a.m. I reached for them without opening my eyes, and my fingers closed on empty air. My stomach dropped before I even stood up. I rushed to the window and stared at bare concrete where a $40,000 SUV had been sitting only hours earlier. No tracks, no note, no explanation. Then my phone vibrated. A message from an unfamiliar number, but I recognized the area code immediately. It was Amanda, my brother's girlfriend, and she sent a photo before I could respond. The front of the SUV was crushed against a telephone pole, the hood folded like paper airbags hanging open glass, scattered across a dark road. Her next message arrived instantly. "We're okay, but the car is totaled." We went to a concert 2 hours away near the shopping center. He drank a lot, but insisted he could drive back. It happened around 5 on a quiet road. My hands shook as I zoomed in on the silver paint, the license plate, the unmistakable shape of Dad's car. I was still standing there in my pajamas when Dad walked in with his coffee humming until he saw my face. I handed him the phone. The color drained from his skin. I told him quietly that my brother had taken the keys from my dresser while I slept, thinking it was my car. Dad collapsed onto the couch, whispering that it had to be a mistake, that maybe someone stole it, that maybe I forgot, but I already had every screenshot saved, and I knew the real explosion in our family was only beginning, so if stories with devastating family twists hook you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because the moment everything finally shatters is coming next. 4 hours later, the front door lock clicked, and my older brother stepped into the hallway, looking like he'd been through a war shirt, untucked and wrinkled hair matted with sweat. A thin, fresh cut above his eyebrows, still oozing a little blood, the faint reek of beer and cigarette smoke clinging to him like a second skin. Dad launched off the couch in an instant, cushions flying sideways, crossing the room in 3 long strides to grab his son's face with both hands, tilting it under the harsh hallway light to inspect the wound. "Son, what happened to your head? Where were you all night? Are you hurt anywhere else?" The words tumbled out fast, laced with that desperate protective edge Dad always pulled out whenever my brother came home looking roughed up. My brother flicked his gaze toward me for a split second, long enough to see I hadn't put the phone down, then locked eyes with Dad again. "I'm fine. Dad really just crashed at a buddy's place after the concert, borrowed a ride to get there and back. Nothing serious happened. He left out the totaled SUV, left out the airbags, left out the pole, left out every fact that would have mattered right then." I raised my phone so the screen caught the overhead light and the photo filled the space between us. "This is the ride you borrowed." The color vanished from his face in one visible wave, leaving him pale and wide-eyed. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, and words spilled in a frantic jumble. "Jess, come on, you said it was okay. You left the keys right there for me, I swear. And the crash wasn't my fault. Some idiot swerved into my lane on that back road. I panicked, tried to correct, and it just happened. I'm sorry if it looks bad, but I didn't mean to wreck anything." Dad's head snapped back and forth between us, brows furrowing deeper with every word. "Jess, did you tell him he could take the car?" "No." I kept my voice even, almost detached. "I was asleep." He took the keys from my dresser without asking. My brother's jaw clenched hard enough, I could see the muscle jump. "You're lying, you always do this, make me the villain so you look like the perfect one, Dad. She's jealous, always has been. She probably hid the keys herself just to screw me over." Dad's shoulders sagged a fraction the way they always did when the blame started shifting toward his son. I watched the change happen in real time. the eyes that had been sharp with worry softening into familiar forgiveness. "Look, maybe it was a misunderstanding," he said, voice lowering to that placating tone. "Accidents happen. Nobody got seriously hurt. You're home safe. Now that's what matters. We can figure out the rest tomorrow." He stepped in closer, one hand settling on my brother's shoulder, guiding him toward the couch, like he was still a kid who'd fallen off his bike. "Sit down, son. Let me get you some ice for that cut." Jess, ease up. He's shaken up. He wouldn't take something without permission on purpose. The pattern locked in so smoothly it felt scripted, my brother dropping onto the cushions, rubbing his temple, playing the wounded role to perfection, while Dad hovered, already shifting into full protector mode. Right then, another text buzzed against my palm from Amanda again. I glanced down without turning the screen. "He told me last week your sister doesn't deserve a nice ride like that anyway," said. It should have been his turn for once. I didn't speak it out loud, not yet, but the air in the room thickened, turned heavy like the second before lightning strikes. And I knew the real lightning was only moments away. I nodded slowly and asked Dad if he wanted to call the insurance company right then, or if he preferred I handle it. The room went dead silent, except for the low hum of the air conditioner kicking on outside. Dad's eyes locked on mine, confusion still swirling but now edged with something darker, something heavier. I kept my voice steady and reminded him that the night before he had pressed the keys into my hand, specifically told me to pull his SUV closer to the garage in the morning because my sedan was still sitting in the repair shop, waiting on parts, and the only vehicle in the driveway when we all turned in had been his shiny new silver one he'd been so proud of. Dad's breathing hitched short and sharp. He surged to his feet, hands shaking as he snatched the phone from me again, staring at the photo like he could will the damage away, the crumpled hood, the deployed airbags, the unmistakable silver paint reflecting the flash of whoever took the picture. It was his car. No question. His $40,000 pride reduced to twisted metal against a telephone pole on some forgotten back road. He spun toward my older brother, face twisting into an expression I'd never seen aimed at him before, raw fury mixed with deep betrayal, the kind that cut straight through years of excuses. "Why did you take the car without a single word?" Dad's voice came out low, trembling with restraint. "Why did you go out partying and then drive? Why did you walk in here and lie to my face about everything?" My brother retreated half a step, palms raised like he could ward off the questions. "Dad, I swear I thought it was Jess's car. It was pitch black. I couldn't make out the difference. It was an honest mistake. I panicked when it happened. I didn't mean to wreck anything." Dad's jaw tightened further. Honest mistake doesn't cover taking a car that isn't yours, doesn't cover drinking too much, and getting behind the wheel, doesn't cover coming home and feeding me a story about borrowing from a friend. A quick memory sliced through my head the afternoon 2 years back when my brother had slipped $500 from my savings envelope for a last-minute trip. And when I confronted him, Dad had shrugged it off with a casual, "Boys will be boys. Just don't blow it up into something bigger." The same light tone he'd used over and over to brush aside my brother's shortcuts, while I ended up feeling like the one making trouble for speaking up. Dad paced a tight circle twice, then planted himself in front of my brother again. "Do you have any idea what you've actually done? That car is gone totaled insurance, might refuse to pay a cent because you weren't on the policy, and you were intoxicated when it happened." My brother's eyes dropped to the floor, voice shrinking. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't think it through. I just messed up." Dad didn't answer right away. He stood there, chest rising and falling hard, fists balled at his sides, the silence stretching taut like a wire about to snap. I stayed quiet, watching the fracture the exact instant the pattern of protection cracked open wide. I wondered quietly to myself how many people watching would feel that same twist in their gut, the one where the favoritism they'd always accepted or ignored suddenly lands on their own doorstep and looks entirely different when it costs them something real. The quiet held heavy and electric until Dad finally spoke again, his tone colder, sharper than I'd ever heard it. This stops being just an accident right now. And I could feel his anger was only beginning to catch fire. My older brother let out a strangled gasp, and the apologies started tumbling out in a frantic rush. Dad, I didn't know, I swear I panicked. That's why I lied, I never meant for any of this to happen. Dad remained perfectly still, eyes fixed on him with an icy focus that made the room feel 10 degrees colder. Why did you party all night and then choose to get behind the wheel? Why have you stood there and lied to me repeatedly about one thing after another? My brother's voice cracked into full sobs, shoulders heaving as he pressed both hands to his face. I was so scared, Dad. The crash, the noise, the lights. I thought I was going to die. I've never been that terrified in my life. I'm traumatized. I can't even process it. Dad finally sank onto the couch, head dropping into his open palms, fingers digging into his scalp like he was trying to hold his skull together. Do you have any clue what you've actually caused? That car is completely totaled. Insurance has every reason to reject the claim outright because you were not authorized to drive it and you were intoxicated at the time of the accident. He raised his head just enough to meet my brother's eyes, voice dropping to a hard edge. If I file this as a DUI incident, the police will be involved. Your license could be suspended for a full year in Virginia, possibly longer depending on the blood alcohol level and the report. My brother's face collapsed, further tears streaking down. No, Dad, please don't report it. I'll lose my job. I need to drive every day. I'll be finished if that happens. Dad pressed his palms harder against his temples. You should have considered the consequences before you helped yourself to a car that didn't belong to you, before you drank too much and decided you were still fit to drive, before you walked through that door and tried to sell me a lie about staying at a friend's. The explanation landed heavy and deliberate, the car gone forever, the policy almost certainly voided, the $28,000 still owed, after the down payment now looming like a debt that wouldn't disappear overnight. My brother kept whispering, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I'll make it right, between broken sobs. But Dad offered no comfort. He simply sat there, head still, cradled, breathing deep and measured as though forcing himself to stay anchored. I watched the fracture widen, the long habit of protection finally buckling under the weight of something too big to excuse the pattern of leniency hitting its limit in real time. I turned without speaking and walked upstairs, my steps soft on the carpet, but the argument chased me anyway. My brother's pleas growing louder, more frantic. Dad, please give me a chance. I'll pay it back. I'll do anything. While Dad's responses came back shorter, colder, each one slicing through the air. Pay it back with what you think a retail job is going to cover, $28,000 plus a new car overnight. From the hallway at the top, I could hear the desperation climb, my brother sounding smaller with every exchange, Dad sounding more final, every word landing like a lock turning. I slipped into my bedroom, closed the door quietly, and stood with my back against it, listening to the voices rise and fall below my brother's tone, edging toward panic, Dad's toward steel, knowing the financial fallout was about to press down far heavier than any of us had braced for. 1 hour later, a quiet knock came at my bedroom door, and Dad eased it open, stepping inside with the careful movements of someone carrying too much weight. He looked utterly drained, eyes, sunken cheeks, hollowed out, as if the fight downstairs had carved 10 years into his face in the span of minutes. He lowered himself onto the edge of my bed, the mattress sighing under him, and for a long beat he just stared at the carpet pattern like it held answers he couldn't find anywhere else. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse, raw around the edges. Jess, I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry. I should have believed you the moment you showed me that photo. I should have stood with you instead of rushing to shield him again. I remained where I was, leaning back against my desk, arms folded tight across my chest, feeling the old familiar burn rise in my throat. The resentment that had simmered since I was a teenager every single time he chose the path of least resistance. Every single time he turned my warnings into complaints. Every single time he let my brother slide while I was left holding the bag for calling it out. But I swallowed the urge to unload it all right then. I let the silence do the work, let him feel the full gravity of what he had just admitted. He lifted his head, met my eyes, and the vulnerability there almost startled me. What do I do now? I don't even know how to begin fixing this. I held his gaze steady. That's your call, Dad. This isn't my mess to clean up. I didn't take the car, I didn't crash it, I didn't lie about where I'd been or what I'd done. You decide what happens next. He winced, the flinch traveling through his whole body like a current, but he didn't look away, didn't interrupt. I pressed on, voice even. How many times have you taken his side? How many excuses have you built for him when he crossed lines, when he took things that weren't his, when he hurt people and walked away clean? Every time I tried to say something, you flipped it back on me, made me the one who was too strict, too unforgiving, too much trouble. Now it's your SUV, your money, your trust that's shattered. You get to choose whether this time is different. Dad's throat worked visibly. He swallowed hard twice before speaking again. You're saying I should let the police take him, let them arrest my own son, put him through the system. I lifted one shoulder. I'm saying actions have consequences. He chose his. If involving the police is what protects what's left of your boundaries, then do it. If you let it go again, then you're choosing to keep the cycle spinning. He stared at me longer, searching my face as though seeing the woman I'd become, the one who'd learned to stand firm while he'd spent years bending. The quiet between us felt different this time, not tense, not angry, more like the first real conversation we'd had in years, the kind where truth finally got a seat at the table. I wondered how many others had sat in rooms just like this facing a parent who'd always picked peace over accountability, wondering if mercy for the same tired pattern was kindness, or just another way to guarantee it would happen again. Dad exhaled a long, shaky breath, dragging both hands down his face. I can't keep pretending this is okay, Jess. I can't keep pretending he'll grow out of it if I just give him one more chance. He rose slowly, joints popping, the movement heavy with decision. I need time to think this through. He paused at the doorway, fingers gripping the knob, looking back at me with a mix of regret and something close to respect. Thank you for not letting me hide from the truth anymore. Then he pulled the door closed softly, footsteps retreating down the hall toward the stairs. I stayed rooted in place, pulse steady, mind already turning over what came next, knowing whatever path he picked tonight would redraw every line in this house for good. 3 days after the crash, the insurance verdict came down exactly as predicted. Dad spent 3 exhausting hours on the phone, cycling through customer service reps, supervisors, claims adjusters, arguing, pleading, threatening to cancel every policy he had with them, but the answer stayed the same, flat and final. Claim denied, unauthorized operator intoxication exclusion, family member theft clause, all delivered in polite scripted sentences that hit like punches. Dad ended the call by slamming the receiver down so hard the kitchen table jumped, then sat motionless for a full minute, staring at the wall before opening his laptop and pulling every document he could find: policy printouts, loan agreements, down payment receipts, maintenance records. He spread them across the table like battle plans, ran the numbers again and again, fingers trembling as the reality settled in large down payment, still owed $28,000, the SUV now officially scrap metal, hauled away that morning, leaving nothing but a towing receipt and a gaping hole in his finances. At 60, the worry was etched deeper: retirement savings he'd built carefully over decades, suddenly at risk of being raided to cover a mistake he hadn't made, one unexpected disaster away from delaying plans he'd counted on for years, something far too many Americans in their 60s face when family chaos bleeds into their security. My older brother remained barricaded in his room for 2 solid days. Door locked, lights off, only occasional sounds of pacing or muffled crying leaking through the walls. When he finally appeared on the 3rd morning, he looked like a ghost, unshaven eyes, bloodshot clothes hanging loose as if he'd shrunk inside them. He walked straight to Dad, who was still hunched over the kitchen table, papers everywhere, and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Dad, I know I destroyed everything. I'm sorry. I'll get a job. I'll pay it all back, every dollar. I promise I'll start looking today. Dad lifted his head slowly. Eyes tired but piercing studied his son for a long silent moment, then answered quietly. With what exactly minimum wage full-time, even if you work every shift they offer, it'll take years to cover 28,000 plus interest, plus whatever a replacement vehicle costs. Years, son. And that assumes no breakdowns, no medical bills, no life interruptions along the way. My brother's face twisted, but he didn't push back. He just stood there, shifting from foot to foot, swallowing hard. I'll do it, Dad. I'll prove I can. I'll find something steady. I'll send you checks every month. Dad closed the laptop with deliberate care, stacked the papers into a neat pile. I'm not saying impossible. I'm saying understand what you're actually committing to. This isn't a weekend fix. My brother nodded quickly, too quickly. I get it. I'll make it right. Dad didn't reply. He simply nodded once and turned back to the screen, the conversation ending not with anger, but with a heavy, exhausted acceptance. I kept my distance that week, heading to my elementary classroom in Short Pump every morning, teaching fractions, reading comprehension, playground duty, carrying on as if the house wasn't slowly suffocating under the strain, coming home to the same thick quiet, everyone orbiting each other carefully. No eye contact, no small talk. Just the unspoken pressure building day after day, coiling tighter, waiting for the inevitable snap that would finally push everything to its breaking point. 3 days after the insurance denial, the atmosphere in the house had turned so thick it felt hard to breathe. My older brother cornered me in the narrow hallway that afternoon, blocking my way to the kitchen, arms folded tight, eyes bloodshot and furious. Happy now, Jess. You got Dad wrapped around your finger. You could end this with one word, just tell him it was all a big misunderstanding, calm him down. I stopped cold, looked him square in the face. Why exactly would I do that? He stepped closer, voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Because we're family. Family sticks together. Family fixes each other's messes. One sentence from you and this disappears. I didn't back up an inch. Family doesn't steal cars. Family doesn't lie to cover the theft. Family doesn't dump the cleanup on the person who got robbed. His expression twisted rage, flashing through the desperation. You're so self-righteous. Always the victim, always the saint. This is your fault too. You pushed him to this. Before I could respond, Dad's voice cut through from the living room doorway, low and unshakable. Christopher, start packing. You're moving out soon. I can't share space with someone I don't trust anymore. My brother whirled around, shock freezing him mid-step. You're kidding, Dad. You can't be serious. This is my house too. Dad didn't raise his volume. I'm dead serious. I need room to breathe. I need to sort out what's left of my life without wondering what else will vanish. My brother spun back to me, eyes blazing. You turned him against me. You've been plotting this the whole time, waiting for your chance. I shook my head once. You turned him against you. You took the car, you wrecked it, you lied straight to his face. Everything after that is just the fallout from your choices. He stared at me, another heartbeat, then shoved past hard enough to knock my shoulder into the wall. 3 days later, he was gone, duffel bag slung over his shoulders, heading to Amanda's place, the same girlfriend who'd sent me the crash photos weeks earlier. The house settled into an eerie quiet. No more slammed doors, no more pacing footsteps, no more waiting for the next explosion, just a hollow stillness that echoed louder than any argument. But the calm didn't hold. 2 weeks after he left, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered, and his voice came through tight, desperate. Just put Dad on. Please, I need to talk to him. I handed the phone over silently. Dad listened for less than 30 seconds, face impassive, then spoke in a tone so steady it chilled me. No, Christopher, you're not coming back. Not now. Figure it out on your own the way adults do. Get your own place. Keep your job, handle your responsibilities. That's what life looks like when you're not under this roof. He paused, listened to the pleading, then added, I'm not changing my mind. Good luck. He ended the call, set the phone down gently, and looked across the table at me. He's still at Amanda's, but she texted me this morning, said she's done with the drama, can't take it anymore. I nodded once. Dad rubbed his jaw slowly. I don't know if I went too far, Jess, but I know letting him stay would just restart the same cycle. The quiet that followed carried everything we'd left unsaid for years, a fragile new boundary forming in the space where old habits used to live. 6 months later, the real test would come, whether justice had finally taken hold, or if the pull of the past would find a crack to slip through again. 6 months had slipped by, and the house in Short Pump carried a new kind of quiet one that felt earned rather than forced. Dad had carved out a simpler routine, one free from the constant pull of someone else's storms. He traded cash from his savings for a no-nonsense used sedan. Reliable, plain, nothing to brag about, no more loans, no more showy rides, just transportation that started every morning without complaint. Over dinner one night, he admitted what he'd never said out loud before. I didn't realize how much of my life I spent putting out fires. Jess, how much energy went into keeping Christopher from burning everything down? I'm done chasing approval from people who don't respect boundaries. My older brother had found work stocking shelves at a retail chain in the area. He flooded social media with posts celebrating every shift, every paycheck, every small win framed like major milestones. But Dad never reacted. No likes, no comments, no acknowledgement. The digital silence louder than any argument. Then one Saturday morning, he appeared on the doorstep, uninvited, thinner, hollow-cheeked eyes, carrying shadows that hadn't been there before. Dad met him at the door, kept the conversation firmly on the porch. No step inside, no welcome mat extended. My brother spoke fast, voice steady but edged with strain. Dad, I've been going to therapy consistently. I understand now what boundaries mean, what responsibility really looks like. I've violated your trust, I know that. I'm changing. I want to earn it back. Start paying what I owe, even if it takes years. Dad listened. Arms folded, expression guarded. I'm glad you're working on yourself, Christopher. That's a start. My brother pushed forward. I've saved a bit already. I can send checks monthly. I'm committed this time. Dad paused, looked past him toward the street, then shook his head slowly. I'm not ready to open the door again. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Trust isn't a switch. It takes time. And right now, I'm protecting what peace I have left. My brother's voice cracked. When will you be ready? Dad exhaled. I don't have an answer for that. It's not a timeline I can promise. He glanced inside, called my name softly. I stepped out, saw my brother standing there looking diminished. He turned to me. Jess, I'm sorry. I know the damage wasn't just to Dad. I treated you badly too, resented you for being steady while I kept falling. I see it clearly now. I nodded once. I never tried to make you look bad. You did that yourself. He swallowed hard. I know. I'm sorry anyway. Amanda had ended things weeks earlier, texted Dad that the endless fallout, the instability, the drama had become too much. She was out, couldn't carry it anymore. Later, my brother's social media shifted darker posts about couch surfing, temporary addresses, vague cries for understanding, but Dad had blocked him completely. No more glimpses, no more updates, just a clean cut. I thought back to that morning in pajamas, staring at the empty driveway. The instant Dad's excuses shattered the moment favoritism hit its own wall. Justice hadn't arrived with noise or revenge. It came quietly through boundaries, finally enforced through silence, where words used to fill gaps. This story probably stirs memories for a lot of people, those brutal family choices where cutting contact becomes the only path to protect what remains. Decisions carry real weight. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone close is stop shielding them from the truth. Families grow stronger when they confront problems head-on, refuse to enable destructive patterns, and choose trust over temporary peace. Thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to leave a comment, sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos.